Megan Fox has the story.
Megan Fox.
Megan Fox.
Megan Fox.
Megan Fox. Megan Fox, a national journalist.
Mastodon. I will never be able to say that.
It feels like the Flintstones live there.
It does.
Well, don't trust women. I think you just touched on that with your last. That's what they brought. We're going to have to bring back chaperones.
Jesus, no.
Just careful. Stop! Break! Ooh. Hard right.
How did you screw up a stove, Megan? You're a woman. I thought that was baked into you, like at the genetic level, how to operate kitchen equipment.
And honestly, Megan, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you.
You get Dino hanging out outside chewing on a large bone. I highly recommend being targeted by the New York Times and Rolling Stone for weight loss. And I'd say, keep it coming. I need to lose 20 more. Please, keep it coming.
Explain to me, Megan, why did this country not have a holiday once a year? That's the time you vote. If you don't show up and vote, up your ass. You don't get another chance. You don't get, I don't care if you're in the hospital. Crawl to the stake, crawl there. But that's it, 1 day, 12 hours, and then you're done. And you count them that day, and that night you know who the hell won.
I will eat you alive. You want to tangle? You want to go?
The only thing going through my head is, what are you going to do when Megan Fox runs wild on you, brother?
He made a deal with the devil. She's the devil.
He wants that.
Oh, God. Gross! Oh! All right. Penalty box for slug. Yep.
Of a mile.
Are you ready to behave yourself now, slug?
This frustrating rep.
Are you ready to behave yourself? Repossessed puppies. I'm hiding pork chop. ASAP. Have you seen his little pork chop? Oh my God, pork chop is the cutest.
That sounds bad.
Have you seen it?
Pork. It's pork.
Though you may be tempted, do not contact any person or persons mentioned on this stream. Do not even think about contacting anyone who may be the topic of the daily news. If you should do that, the host will question your IQ, possibly call you names, and mock you for disobeying these basic rules of decency.
All the best.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the show. It's me, Megan Fox, your favorite medium smart journalist, and I have a new case for you today. Friend of the program, Jennifer Williams, who has brought us all of the medical kidnapping cases in Georgia, said you really need to meet Grant Phillips. You really need to hear his story. And so I've been communicating with Grant. He has a case against multiple doctors and DCF workers in Indiana. And we are going to go over that case today. But first, let's get to know Grant. Welcome to the program. Grant, how are you?
I'm great, Megan. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad to have been put in touch with you. It is, I'm sorry it's under these circumstances, because any family I've ever spoken to who's gone through this medical kidnapping situation has been, basically destroyed by the system itself. So tell me, why don't we start about, like, who are you? How did these people come into your life, and who are they? I'm going to pull up the filing and we can maybe start going over like the characters and when this all started for you.
Yeah. My wife and I live in Indianapolis, Indiana. And we have two beautiful daughters who are now 3 and 2. But at the time that we became involved with DCS, it's called the Department of Children's Services here in Indiana. This was December of 2022. So our eldest daughter was a year a little over a year old at the time, like a year and 8 months, something like that. And then our youngest at the time, who we had just had in October of 2022, she was 2 months old.
Oh, wow.
So
2 babies.
yeah, 2 babies, and perfect babies. Nara, ever since she was born, she was wonderful, just the sweetest, happiest little baby. So Odessa too is my oldest, wonderful baby too. So in December, this all happened the day after Christmas.
Oh, jeez.
We had our family gathering. We'd been with family like the 4 days previous leading up into Christmas. And, Nara was perfectly healthy in everybody's eyes. We had, kept up with all the regular doctor's appointments, no concerns from anyone whatsoever. And then the day after Christmas, we noticed she had a swollen leg, like so many of the other stories.
Like
that
Emma, like Emma Hernandez.
I know.
That is so, that is, whenever I hear the similarities in this case, I mean, my head wants to explode. How can you be a pediatrician and not have heard of these cases where there's unexplained swelling and there should be deeper, a deeper look at what's the underlying cause here, and not jump directly to you're a child abuser.
I know. It's unbelievable. So I was at work at the time. So my wife calls me and says, hey, she woke up from her nap. She has a swollen leg. I've called the pediatrician. They'd asked me to take her to the urgent care.
And let me just verify, how old was she at the time?
2 months.
Only, so like Emma, again, really little baby. Okay, so she takes her to the emergency room, and this is at what hospital?
Well, we took her to the urgent care first, and they said we don't see babies younger than 3 months of age. So they asked us to take her to Riley Children's Hospital in Indianapolis.
Okay, Riley.
So
now I noticed that your complaint does not include the hospital itself. You decided not to sue the hospital?
So that's because the contracts and we can get into this a little more later too. The contracts that the state has with IU Health is through the IU School of Medicine, and the IU School of Medicine funds the child abuse pediatrics program that Riley Children's Hospital has. So the doctors that work within this fellowship program that they have through the school are listed in this contract as basically agents of the state. They're funded by the state.
This is the same thing as the Kowalski case. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they provide services to state agents through DCS and are mandated to provide a certain number of hours every week to these child abuse investigations that they do through DCS. So all of that was unbeknownst to us at the time. I mean, we show up with our baby. She has a swollen leg. So it's my wife at the time, because I stayed at home I came home from work and stayed with our oldest daughter so that, we had least amount of interruption to her as possible. But so my wife's there by herself. They're like, okay, we're going to do some x-rays because, she seems fine. She's perfectly happy, not crying. So they run these x-rays, and then I get a phone call from my wife, who is crying, telling me that our baby has multiple fractures across her body in various stages of healing, and that Department of Child Services has been contacted, and I need to make arrangements to come to the hospital.
Oh God, where did they say they found the fractures?
In her legs at the time. There was one active break in her left tibia shaft, which is the one that was causing the swelling, and it was a transverse fracture.
So
which means straight across.
That's kind of unusual, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Because most of what they like to use to define the fractures that occur with child abuse are mechanisms of twisting, pulling, or yanking, and a transverse fracture is not indicative of that kind of movement.
Right. So that's interesting. Was she approached by who is the child abuse pediatrician who made this determination that it was, they needed to call DCS?
That's the other thing. No child abuse pediatrician was there that night. This was done via phone, so we never had any interaction or any knowledge that child abuse pediatricians were involved.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Who called? So someone from the hospital, like the ER doctor, called the child abuse pediatrician on the phone.
Correct.
And the child abuse pediatrician made the diagnosis of abuse over the phone?
Correct.
And who is that?
Well, so Dr. Marissa Luma was the first child abuse pediatrician that was involved that night.
Okay.
And yeah, so she apparently, through the phone was consulting with the doctors that were there in the emergency room and was able to make the determination that abuse occurred just because of the fractures existing. And, so I get to the hospital. They kind of go through the same thing with me. They've already got Nara in a soft cast on her left leg. And DCS was there already. Our intake case manager was there. She asked us the standard questions like, do you know what happened? Do you know? And, we're like, no, she's been perfectly healthy and happy. Nobody's ever noticed anything. We were just with all our relatives for Christmas.
And I'm sure she got passed around like crazy.
Exactly. And,
at Christmas,
that's what we were
where, everyone's taking turns with the baby.
Well, and, when you're talking about apparently various fractures over that are healing. So it's like, has she been just getting fractures ever since she was born? Like, and not showing any signs of it, because her pediatrician has been moving and manipulating her as well during her appointments and
Sure.
never any issues. So, we racked our brains and we couldn't think outside of any, normal type of movement that could cause such a traumatic injury. So, unfortunately, DCS made the decision that I would have. So I had to go back home and bring our oldest in for a set of x-rays as well. And, at the time we're compliant parents. We have, we are concerned for our child.
Sure.
And we're trying to do everything we can to make sure she gets the medical treatment she needs. And we didn't realize that all of that was going to lead to them being removed from us within 6-7 hours.
Did you have any clue at the moment that maybe you should call an attorney before you, acquiesce to their demands?
I've worked in law enforcement, and I grew up in a law enforcement home. My dad was an assistant police chief, and it's like, no, I had no indication that we were under any sort of need to have an attorney, because I've grown up trusting that doctors are performing in the best interest. And no, I felt that we were loving and caring parents bringing our child to the emergency room because she had medical issues that needed resolved. And I did not realize that we were going to lose custody of our children and that we would need an attorney to represent us at that point, or tell us.
Were you ever notified that you were under investigation for child abuse? Like, did they give you basically, like, were you notified a Miranda warning or anything like that?
No, they told us we couldn't leave the hospital.
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
Did they threaten you with arrest if you were to leave the hospital?
Well, they had the police come and give us a case number that they had opened up an investigation with the police. But thank God they didn't arrest us. But
oh my God.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most traumatic nights of my life that I can think back on. That's for sure.
And what year? This was in 2023.
This was December of 2022.
2022. Okay.
So they removed our girls and placed them with my wife's brother and my sister-in-law.
That same night?
That same night. We
wow. No second opinion. No specialist. No. Did you see?
All via phone call.
Did the baby see anybody but the ER doctor?
No.
Oh, that's insane. That's literally insane.
It is.
does Indiana, and I know we're kind of jumping around, and because these stories are very complicated, and oh God, what did I just do? I just knocked something over. Sorry. These cases are so complicated that questions pop into my head about we're going to jump into the future and stuff. But did you ever find out if there are laws in Indiana that protect parents? There are laws in Texas now that say you're entitled to a second opinion. Oh, there's news from Georgia. This is brand new. The DCS supervisors in Georgia, folks, I forgot to tell you about this. Jennifer Williams emailed me the other day, and I've got to have her back on for an update. But the DCS supervisor in Georgia has now implemented a new rule that says parents are required to be notified that they are allowed to get a second opinion in these cases of so-called medical child abuse. And they've done this because they have had so much pushback from the public. So did Indiana ever, did you find out if there's any laws that protect you there?
There's virtually no laws protecting from any of that at this time. And I'm currently working with legislators to try and get some of those things into state statute, because absolutely nothing.
How long were your children kept away from you? How long were you actually separated?
We were 347 days separated. And this was all pre-adjudication, Megan. We never were adjudicated. The moment we were adjudicated, we won our children back.
Yeah, I was reading through your complaint and some of the things that DCS did. I'm like, my jaw's on the floor. It was unfounded in the first place, and yet they continue to keep your children. They couldn't give the what do they call it? CHINS, the child in need of, or what is it? Child in need of services. They couldn't put your kids in that category, but they continue to keep them from you for a year. You're telling me a year they did this to you with no adjudication, no evidentiary hearing. Aren't you entitled to an evidentiary hearing within, I think it's 70 days in some cases, or 60 days?
We were advised to waive some of the deadlines on those things because we were seeking medical answers for our child. And those things take time, genetic testing, appointments, all of those things take time and months even. We did whole genome sequencing. That takes 4 or 5 months.
Oh, God. How much visitation time did you get when they were taking?
18 hours per week in a center, because our relatives refused to supervise our visits because they eventually sided with DCS and the doctors. So that was a whole nother can of worms that we had going on as well during the case. And so we never progressed to in-home visits until nearly 8 months into the case, after my attorneys deposed all of the DCS workers because they refused to do it. And actually 6 months into the case, we had already voluntarily completed all of the services that DCS had recommended. So June of 2023, 6 months before our kids even came home, we were done. There was nothing keeping the case open other than DCS saying, we don't know who hurt this child, and the parents won't tell us.
Was your wife breastfeeding at the time?
She was.
Both babies? Was she breastfeeding both babies? Or
I believe Odessa was on the back end of it. But Nara was exclusively breastfed at the time. And that was
that's awful.
Yeah, my wife had to actually our relatives were cruel enough to make us have to drop off breast milk outside of their garage door. So
what in the hell? I hope that you're not speaking to them anymore, because that's a horrific situation.
The majority of the family is not speaking with them anymore. So
what a strange thing. This might be the first case where I've heard of the family members joining the state in this insanity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Our attorneys said, 30 years of practice, they've never seen anything like it. So
really?
Yeah,
well, that's insult to injury.
Aspect. Exactly.
All right. So let's get over to here, because so she was diagnosed at some point, the baby, with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Yeah. When did that occur? When did you get that diagnosis? And did that change anything for you?
So we actually did not get that full diagnosis until January of 2024. 2024, which was the month after the case closed. But my wife and I had gone to Boston and gotten diagnosed back in June of 2023 when the case was open. So
Oh,
we
that's
weren't.
similar to the Sullivans. Mrs. Sullivan also went to Boston and got diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos, which is how it and which showed them what was going on with the baby, most likely. So, are you both? Do you both have?
We do. We both carry the genetic condition of
gene.
Ehlers-Danlos, and both of our girls have, all the signs and symptoms of it as well. So I think Nara was given, now that she's been physically evaluated, she has that, it's like medically sound that she has the condition. But at the time in June, we were able to determine that Nara had at least a 75% chance of having the condition, just based on the mode of transmission by both of us having it.
And Ehlers-Danlos, for those of you who don't know, is a connective tissue disorder. It can cause fractures. It can cause dislocations. It has hypermobility, right? Like hyper flexibility. Can cause a lot of pain. Also, some people who have it don't have a ton of pain. They just have these hyper flexibility, etc. It can vary from patient to patient, but in infants, it can absolutely cause what can look like abuse because of the bones and the breaking of bones, etc. And I feel like there should be, by this point, legal funds set up for people who have Ehlers-Danlos, because this happens so much. You're not the first. This is the third or fourth case that I've covered like this, maybe the fifth, because I have another one. There's a big lawsuit right now that one of my other lawyer friends is bringing against a hospital, a big one, for doing this to a girl with Ehlers-Danlos as well. They kept her hostage for a long time and basically tortured her. It's very much like Maya Kowalski. I still haven't finished reading that case. So I feel like this should did you connect with any Ehlers-Danlos groups and here, to get some support there? Do they have legal support? Like, how do you get in contact with attorneys at this point to figure out what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't come across any legal funds or anything like that, unfortunately. I mean, the majority of these cases, you'll hear from the parents that, they've spent anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 just to through all aspects of the case, just to get their kids back and advocate for the medical conditions. That's something that I would like to work towards. And I did recently join You Are the Power as well. To try and bring some of these things to Indiana, like you just mentioned, that they were the big achievement of theirs in Georgia. I'm hoping to get some of those things done up here too. But I think right now the biggest thing is awareness and just letting these legislators know what's going on with these families in these situations that are being traumatized by these doctors. And one thing about Ehlers-Danlos too, it is in the same family of disorders as osteogenesis imperfecta.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it so insane to any doctor that this condition that is in the same family of connective tissue disorders that causes fractures, why is it out of the realm of possibility that Ehlers-Danlos can cause fractures, especially in infants? It shouldn't be. And I think it's very evident these child abuse pediatricians have been getting away with this for so long, and they're protected by state money
and immunity.
Yeah, and they're abusing that, and real families are suffering because of it.
So you're suing a bunch of people here. You're suing both of the doctors.
Yeah.
At the hospital, Rachel, and also Rachel Lucas, who was the case manager at Marion County DCS office.
Who was terminated for breach of confidentiality and dishonesty.
Oh, really? So that's very unusual. Normally, they just give them promotions.
Well, yeah, one case manager did get a promotion from our case as well. But Rachel was, Rachel, she was the one that wrote up the original they call them 311 reports here in Indiana, which is the initial findings that they provide to the court to seek removal of the children. So that whole report has basically been, now that we know that she was fired for dishonesty, we've had multiple testimony given, or multiple
Wait,
instances.
was she fired for dishonesty in your case or in a different case?
In a different case, but I mean, we've had
Wow.
testimony now that what she put in the documents for our case could very well be lies.
Sure. That's really unusual that an employee gets fired for dishonesty from DCS. I mean, she had to have done something really egregious, because I have very rarely seen it.
That's the exact word that the administrative judge used in our administrative appeal, because all the regional managers from the state of Indiana were involved in this process of terminating her, because it was a high-profile case that involved the death of a child, apparently.
Oh no.
And she had no attachment to the case, and her name was popping up on access records. So that she had accessed the case. I don't know anything more beyond that, but their hands were tied with her. Basically, they had to fire her.
Wow, that's awful. All right, so what did Rachel Lucas do in your case? We might as well talk about the bad guys here.
So she was there that night and was involved with the child abuse pediatricians in removing our children.
So she's the one who showed up when they called DCS.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. All right. And the doctors who were there, would that be... Well, let's talk about the other DCS case manager. So I can't say this. Adadeo?
Yeah, Adadeo.
Adadeo.
I've never been able to say her last name either.
Well, let's just call her Adadeo. Adadeo O.
Yeah, she went by Deo, is what everybody called her.
Deo, okay.
She was our original, I guess they call them permanency case managers. I don't know. They have intakes, and then they have like the permanent ones that are there for the life of the case after the intake.
I've hardly ever seen one of these cases where there weren't 2 or 3, maybe 4
there
case managers.
Definitely was 2 or 3 within, but
I see you have another one here, Stacia Fields, family case manager supervisor. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the people listed in our complaint were involved in the investigation period that DCS had opened for our case. So they, under the code of the United States for Section 1983, where you're deprived of your due process rights and things like that, with the investigation period that DCS were claiming that they failed to properly investigate or acknowledge information that would have said to the contrary. So these people were all involved in the investigation process, and we're alleging that they disregarded or didn't even acknowledge information or try to include information that would have led to our children not being removed from our care, such as the night in the hospital. They could not say that we, as the parents, were the only people that were with our children that could have caused the injuries alone. They did not put anything in court documents saying that the entire family, 30 or 40 people, had been with the child, our child. So how can you possibly say that we, as the parents bringing our child to the hospital, were the only ones that could have caused the injury? And then, as well as the fact that there's multiple genetic conditions in my family alone, and then my wife has some as well. There are numerous instances of fractures, dislocations, subluxing, all of these things that should have been investigated more thoroughly.
Did they ever even ask you about the family history?
My daughter was not even seen by a child abuse pediatrician until 19 days later after removal.
Wow.
So, no, they didn't investigate anything.
Unbelievable. So you're suing another one here too, Ashley Butler Panter. She was a division manager for DCS. And Peggy Serby, also a regional manager for DCS. What always kills me is how many fingers are in the pie.
Oh,
in one
yeah.
of these cases, and that confuses things so terribly to have all these different cooks in the kitchen. I wish the DCS would try to narrow that down to have a few people who know the case instead of the constant moving around between 4, 5, 6 different people. It just seems unwieldy. And then Anne Freshour. So she was a doctor. She was a child abuse pediatrician. So did you ever have any contact with since they didn't see her till 19 days later, did you have contact with these doctors?
Dr. Freshour is the one that saw Nara physically 19 days later. So, but Dr. Luma, we never even met. The one that was involved the night, and she never testified either at any point in our case. It was all Dr. Freshour.
Wow.
And I do want to say that these two doctors were not even certified child abuse pediatricians at the time. They were in the fellowship program. They hadn't gotten their certification. And the only way they're able to create these documents and records is because the head of the child abuse program, Shannon Thompson, signs off on their records and affirms that everything's been evaluated and is correct.
Well, even if they had their certifications, it wouldn't make much of a difference because child abuse pediatrics is a joke.
Oh, I know.
It's a joke.
It really is.
It's not based on science or common sense. It is a joke. They are a hammer and everything is a nail. That's how they do things. So you're suing these people, all of them, that you're saying that defendants acted individually and jointly under the color of state law to deprive plaintiffs of their civil rights. This is a 1983 case. This is the type of case Sean McMillan brings against, counties and hospitals, and he wins a lot of them. He's the one who has the other Ehlers-Danlos case going right now. How did you get to the point where you decided I'm suing these people? And what was that process like for you? Because I know a lot of families, by the time they get through this, they're just barely surviving, let alone be able to find a lawyer, put together a lawsuit.
Yeah.
So how'd you get there?
Well, thankfully, we have an incredibly loving and supporting family that helped us get through our situation. We wouldn't have been able to do that without our family and friends. And even before our girls came home, we had conversations about how, like, we're not going to let this define our lives. We're going to get our girls back. We're going to show them that we fought, that this can't happen to innocent parents and families. And we thankfully were connected to, well, originally we had great family law attorneys that were able to get our girls home for us.
That's a blessing. That's a blessing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that doesn't happen very often. So your
No.
first set of attorneys in the family law case were good ones?
Absolutely. I'm
Thank
still
God.
very close to my attorney, particularly. She comes with me and testifies in the state house about, legislation issues and things of that nature.
What
But
did
anyway.
she think about this how did you get connected with her and what was her reaction? Had she ever seen anything like this before?
She deals specifically primarily in medically complex cases. And this is something that
Boy, is that lucky.
Yeah, Riley Children's is the majority of her cases.
Really?
Because of these child abuse pediatricians. It's happening all the time.
Because of these specific ones at that hospital? So she's involved.
Yes.
She has more cases against these people.
Oh yeah, every day.
Wow. What? God, this is terrible. And how many has she ever told you how many of her clients have the similar, like Ehlers-Danlos connective tissue disorders? Is it all similar?
At least a few right now that I know of offhand.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and I had a family reach out to me after we went public, and I connected them to her because their case is very similar to ours, and they live in the next town over.
Oh, what a nightmare. What an absolute nightmare that this is going on so often that you've got an attorney specializing in complex medical cases for that hospital.
But for our lawsuit, that attorney, I can't remember exactly how we were referred to him, but I think my wife spoke to a mother actually that had a case similar to ours, and they were able to get a lawsuit filed under this attorney, and he is known for really going against DCS for these kinds of things. So he's very passionate about cases like ours, and
Wonderful.
making sure that parents have a way to, and have some kind of recourse for what DCS and these doctors are doing. And the contract is the only thing that we've been able to come across. He did with this other case too, that you can sue these doctors right now because they have too many protections. So thankfully, the
Oh, they
state has
do. They
granted
have
them.
way too many protections. It's
I know,
insane. Way too
but
many. And they love to claim immunity and that, oh, well, we were acting in good faith, so we get to do whatever we want. They
it's
make
gone to
that
their
argument.
heads. It really has. They just don't care anymore. They have no empathy. They are literally tearing families apart.
This is so unreasonable. So I think we're right around here in where we were talking, going back to your story and how this progressed. So they call their child abuse protection program is called PEDS. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's called the PEDS program. It's a
PEDS,
pediatric
pediatric
evaluation
evaluation. Yeah.
and diagnostics services. Yeah.
Okay. And so it says here, DCS has a contract with Indiana University for key personnel within IUSM's Child Protection Program to provide forensic evaluations to DCS personnel through PEDS program for the purpose of assisting DCS assessments of whether a child has been the victim or abuse of neglect. This is what we talked about in the Kowalski case, where Dr. Sally Smith, I have a button for her we have to use. Where is it? Yeah, there it is. Dr. Sally Smith acted as a police officer. That's really what she was. She was an investigative police officer acting like a doctor, but that's not really what she's there for. She's there working for DCS. So it sounds like the same thing is happening here. These child abuse pediatricians don't really work for the hospital. They work for DCS, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They're required. By this contract, by virtue of the contract, they're required to give at least 4 hours per week of billable hours to DCS. And it goes well beyond that because they're making money. So the contract itself is an annual contract for upwards of $2.6 million a year, and that increases every 2 years. The contract has been in place since 2011. Which is conveniently when the fellowship program started.
And this is so bizarre because it's like you're unleashing then these child abuse pediatricians within a hospital where people think they're going to get help and care. And you're saying, go find us kids to take. Go snatch some kids for DCS so we can get that federal money, because that federal money is released with every head we take. Yeah. So it says under the contract and earlier versions of that agreement, the PEDS program provides approximately 6,000 forensic evaluations to DCS personnel each year.
Yep.
And so I wonder if they have a quota.
That's the number that they like. Anytime you ask these child abuse pediatricians in court, that's the number that they like to give you. And they say they don't know anything else beyond that. But it's like they do sign paperwork when they come on to the program that, they're aware of what they get paid and how many hours they have to provide and who they're supposed to contact and all of those things. So it's a bunch of baloney.
So Doctors Freshour and Luma knew that the purpose of their communications with DCS was to assist DCS personnel evaluate whether to remove children from their parents and accuse their parents of abuse and neglect. Doctors Freshour and Luma knew that children may be improperly removed from their parents' care if they gave false information to DCS personnel. Doctors Freshour and Luma are also physicians with specialty in child abuse pediatrics at Riley. When engaging with Lucas and the Phillips family, Doctors Freshour and Luma were acting in their roles as members of the PEDS program. On December 26th, Lucas spoke with Dr. Luma via telephone, who told Lucas that NP had fractures in each of her fibulas. At no point in time did NP ever have a fractured fibula. What?
Yeah, they literally from the get-go lied about the fractures that she had. These are in the court documents that they used to remove our children. They lied about the number and the severity of the fractures. By the end of our case, so they started with 9 fractures, and they went to 5 by the end of our case, and
They did
nobody
that
ever
in
said
the Georgia cases too. They
it's like,
exaggerated the number of fractures.
yeah,
Oh,
it's
God.
unbelievable.
What is the point of this other than why would you lie about something like that? Why would you want to find abuse? That's the other thing I don't understand is like, again, it's like being a hammer and everything's a nail. You just make it fit. You make it fit, whether it fits or not. It's a square peg in a round hole, but you're going to make it fit. And this is just wrong. This is criminal behavior. They should go to jail.
Yeah.
Dr. Luma knew or should have known that she should not tell any DCS personnel that a child suffered fractures that did not exist. I would agree with that statement 100%.
Yeah.
Dr. Luma told Lucas that NP's fractures were highly suspicious of child abuse, could only have been caused by a significant amount of blunt force, and could not have been caused by a child.
And
Well,
we're
it
talking,
was-
this is too, like, there's no external signs of injury.
Yeah, I was just going to say, was there bruising?
No.
How could you have significant blunt force on an infant and not have bruising?
Yeah. You tell me, I don't know.
This is the same thing with Dr. Barbara Knox told a mother that her baby had been drop kicked. Like a football. Like what? What? That's so insane.
I don't know where they come up with these stories.
This is crazy. Dr. Luma also told Lucas she had an immediate concern for NP's safety. Dr. Luma reached these conclusions without ever seeing NP. Doctors that treated NP saw that NP had blue sclera. What's blue sclera?
It's where the white of your eyes. And
That's what Emma had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where it's bluish.
It's one of the predominant factors that goes into these EDS cases,
Oh, it says right here what it is. It's a symptom of inherited medical conditions associated with predisposition to skeletal fragility like osteogenesis imperfecta and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a congenital connective tissue disorder that can cause hypermobility. The PEDS program records showed that Grant Phillips has blue sclera and a family history of hypermobility disorders. So that was in their records, your medical So you told them that, they put it in the records.
Well, I didn't tell them that. They looked at it.
Wait a minute. They accessed your medical records?
Yeah. I'm not sure about that, but when we went to the appointment 19 days later or whatever it was with Nara, they physically saw that I had blue sclera and noted it.
Wow. So that's really bizarre. Why would they?
Yeah, I mean, they're looking right at things that aren't normal, and they're calling them normal.
Why would
they looked at us when we told them that Nara had blue sclera. They're like, "Well, that's normal with age," and I'm like, "Okay, but is it normal for both the father and the daughter to have blue sclera? Because I'm certainly out of that age range of that being normal." So they're like, "Well." It's like they refuse to look at anything that doesn't fit their narrative.
This is so nuts. A physical examination of Grant and Miranda would also have demonstrated hypermobility consistent with EDS. NP also exhibited other signs of EDS, such as joint clicking, gastroparesis, soft, translucent skin, easy bruising, and frontal bossing. If Dr. Luma had seen NP, then she would have seen that NP had blue sclera and other signs of EDS. Dr. Luma knew or should have known that patients with EDS and low vitamin D are susceptible to fractures. Dr. Luma did not verify whether NP had low vitamin D before giving her conclusions to Lucas. Dr. Luma knew or should have known that she should rule out genetic conditions that could affect bone fragility before informing Lucas or other DCS personnel that NP's injuries could only have been caused by a drop or the use of a significant amount of force, or that they could not have been caused by a child. Dr. Luma did not rule out genetic conditions that could affect bone fragility before informing Lucas or other DCS personnel that NP's injuries could only have been caused by a drop or the use of a significant amount of force. NP has been diagnosed with EDS. Dr. Luma told Lucas that NP did not have a bone deficiency, but did not tell Lucas that NP had EDS. So they were aware that she was diagnosed with this and didn't disclose it?
No, I think my attorney's making the point that, like, they're quick to say that she has no bone deficiency, but they had a reason to see that there could possibly be other conditions, and they
Oh, I
weren't
see.
informed
Yeah,
enough.
I see what he's saying. He's basically saying like, "Oh, you're so sure that
Exactly.
this is caused from a drop, but you could have been sure it was EDS. You didn't do that." After speaking with Dr. Luma, Lucas consulted with her supervisor, Fields, and the two agreed to seize NP and separate her from her family. Lucas seized the children on December 26, 2022. At the time of the seizure, Lucas and Fields had no reason to think that the Phillips, rather than someone else with access to NP, caused NP's fractures. DCS filed a petition seeking to have each of the children be declared children in need of services, CHINS, in the Marion County Superior Court. Lucas and Fields caused the petition to be filed. The petition omitted that NP has EDS. The petition omitted that NP had been handled by numerous adults the days before December 26. The petition was supported by a preliminary inquiry signed by Lucas and Fields. Lucas provided the preliminary inquiry to the state court. The preliminary inquiry falsely stated that NP's fibulas had been fractured, and it omitted that she has EDS and that she had been handled by multiple adults. DCS would not have been able to show probable cause that the Phillips injured NP if this information had been included in the CHINS petition or preliminary inquiry. Dr. Freshour examined her on January 12, 2023. At that visit, Dr. Freshour noted that Grant's blue sclera were concerning. NP's sclera were also blue at that visit. Dr. Freshour knew or should have known that she should rule out genetic conditions that could affect bone fragility before informing DCS and causing this whole problem. Dr. Freshour did not rule out genetic conditions. Despite the blue sclera and the family history of hypermobility, she did not test whether NP had EDS. Then she spoke with the other doctor, we can't pronounce that name, and sent a report stating that NP's injuries were most consistent with non-accidental trauma or inflicted injury, and recommending the DCS take action to ensure the safety of the condition. By non-accidental trauma, she meant physical child abuse. I mean, this is so upsetting. So when they gave this report to the court, Grant, what happened next? Were you at this point, did you know I need a lawyer?
We had a lawyer, but at this point in time, it was 2 days after we hadn't even had a chance to sit down and understand the situation and what this all meant. We just knew that we had to hope for the best going into this hearing, this dispositional hearing. And we were hoping that our relatives were going to let us be able to have supervised visits, and that didn't happen. So we were at that point in time ordered to start supervised visits in a center, and we still so lost in the process, that we're just reeling from having our children removed.
What was that first court process like? The first time you go to court?
It's a 15-minute hearing.
Were you allowed to speak on your own behalf at all?
No, and our
was your
attorney
attorney allowed to speak?
No, they listen to. There's no opportunity for rebuttal. There's no cross-examination. There's nothing.
That's so crazy.
The court basically rubber stamps what the doctors have said. They find that the doctors, it's hearsay. And
it's all hearsay. Is this family court?
It is.
Oh God. What did your attorney prepare you for that before you went in? Did your attorney tell you, we're not going to be allowed to put on your case today?
Yeah, they basically told us that we're just going to have to, really advocate that we get, visitation with your relatives. And that was about the only thing that we could try and do, because everything else was pretty much a guarantee already.
This is not justice. I don't understand why that first court process, why you're not allowed, why the defendant is not allowed to make a case that
it's not
there's
an
been a mistake
hearing at all. I mean, they basically rubber stamp the removal.
But they take evidence from the other side.
Exactly, and they don't give you a chance to, present anything in defense.
And when was the evidentiary hearing scheduled for? When did they tell you? How many?
December 28th. Because I think they have, I think 90 hours or something like that. There's some amount of hours that they have to have
No.
that.
So the 28th was not the evidentiary hearing, but the first hearing where they were just.
Oh, yeah, no.
When did they schedule on that date? They probably set another hearing, right? For when you're allowed to
So
put on your case.
it's
How
60
far
days.
out?
It's 60 days from the dispositional. So we had to waive that to 120 days.
Oh,
You know,
God.
because
You had
remember
to
I
get the
said,
testing and all of that stuff.
so we actually did not have like any kind of evidentiary hearing until I think the first one was in September. And then we needed more time,
Wow.
or actually we didn't. DCS burned up the entire day in court and we weren't able to present anything. So that was another strategy that they were using against us that we couldn't understand. All they had was the doctor. And because they had no evidence that we were bad parents at that time, because all the service providers were putting in positive reports and recommending reunification. So they were just trying to burn us out of energy and money, and it was awful.
So they were like filibustering so that you couldn't put on your case.
Exactly. All
So
they cared
that
about was
hearing
like,
in September, did you get to put on your case, or did it get delayed again?
it got delayed. I mean, we had the day in court, but DCS took the entire day, so we had to. The next available date was November.
Oh my God.
And then on that day, like 3 weeks before that, a judge passed away, and they held the judge's funeral on the exact day our hearing was scheduled for, and they closed the courts.
Oh my God.
So we were pushed out to December. And thankfully, at that time, we're 2 weeks away from the permanency hearing, which my brother and sister-in-law would have been able to file for intervention and file on their own behalf, and they probably would have tried to take our children. I honestly believe that.
Oh, that's crazy.
So, because they had created this narrative on their end that our 2-year-old was eliciting violent behavior in the care of my sister-in-law, and she was the only one that was reporting that behavior. It was never observed anywhere, but we came to the conclusion, and the judge did as well, that DCS was trying to grasp at straws and create an unnecessary service to win their case.
Oh, thank God for that judge.
I know.
I mean,
we
honestly,
really did have a good judge.
Because that's very rare. It's very rare
Yeah.
to get a good judge in family court that sees through that kind of stuff. They usually side with the state just because they put a lot of trust in them. And at times I feel that the judges don't mean to. It's just that they work for the state. So does DCS, and they have this trust, right? They trust that they're being told by court appointed individuals that they're being told the truth. And I feel like
too, it's like with our case, the judge had no other choice by law to see that we had done everything that we were supposed to do as parents. We had completed all services. DCS had no evidence to show that we were bad parents. That is by virtue what a Chin's proceeding is about. It's not the culpability of the parents. It's whether or not the child is in need of services, and there were no services.
Services left to
exactly. The state should have dismissed their case,
but they just refused to do it. Unbelievable. Exactly. Chat, I want to remind you, there are 395 of you here right now. Please, this is a really important stream. And, these are issues that Americans need to hear and stand up and say something about. So please share this. Please tell on social media. Please tell your friends and your family about these cases. I know it's hard to listen to. I know that you guys get depressed when you hear these cases, but here's the good news. The more families like Grant's family that stands up and sues these people, the more this can change, the faster this can change, the faster we can get some kind of awareness on this. And so please do not only like the stream for the algorithm so that it gets pushed to the top of people's lists of things to watch, but share it and tell people about it. And also join You Are the Power because they will, they're doing amazing work in so many different states, and they need state leaders in every state. And I know we've had Spike Cohen on here to talk about the things that they do. Spike is such a wonderful man, and he's done such a wonderful thing with this organization, bringing more awareness to what is going on. And also, parents like Grant and Miranda, they need your support and your help and your prayers, I'm sure. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe. If you have questions for Grant, I'm sure he's happy to answer them. It would be easier for me to see them if you send super chats. Mel Klomp, thanks for the 5, says they absolutely should be in jail, not in protective custody. Yeah, I agree. And Jay Hip, thanks for the 10. I'm in need of CPS. My parents forgot their checkbook when I brought my new car. I had to pay for it myself. What terrible people, Jay. Just absolutely terrible. Lock them up. Okay. So if you guys have any questions for Grant, I'm trying to pay attention to the chat too, but you know how these things get by me sometimes. I'm only medium smart. So help me out. All right. When moving on here, it says that the substantiation that Phillips abused or neglected their children is false. And when DCS substantiates allegations of abuse or neglect against a person, then that person is placed on Indiana's Child Protection Index. Grant, tell me about this and how this affected your family.
So they start this process with the CPI during the case. So you'll get a letter in the mail from DCS saying that these are the facts we have, and this is what we're using. We've investigated, and we're using these facts to substantiate the allegations of abuse or neglect against you and place you on this registry. You have this amount of time to respond and as to a defense as to why you should not be placed on this index. So they started this process. We're like 3 months into our case, especially for my wife, because she's a occupational therapist and sometimes incidentally works with children, not primarily with children.
Oh, God.
But they went after her pretty hard just because of her job. And they like to do that with this registry. They'll go after people in the healthcare profession. I have other cases here in Indiana that I've talked about. And
went after Beata Kowalski. She was a nurse. They went after her hard.
There's that case I brought up earlier. The mother had to quit her job. She was a trauma nurse at an emergency room in a hospital, and she's had to quit her job. They absolutely take advantage of the CPI index to harm families even further during the process, because it's an internally based decision within the agency. There's no accountability behind it. There's no way to stop it from happening. DCS is always going to agree with their own thoughts and procedures. So there's really no way to fight it until after you have your kids home and you can go through the administrative appeal process, which is what my wife and I are doing currently.
You mean she's still on the list?
We both are.
How? If it got dropped?
Because DCS is allowed. The DCS decided that these facts are true themselves.
But the court said they weren't.
The court said that our children were not in need of services. So they did not make a decision as to whether the allegations of abuse were true or not, because we were pre-adjudication up to the fact that the judge said they're not in need of services. So this is a not true finding. We never presented any evidence on our own behalf in defense. DCS simply lost because they couldn't prove their own facts in their case, which they are held to a very low burden of proof. It is called preponderance of the evidence, and they couldn't even meet it.
See, that's one of the things that kills me about these cases. These allegations against you are criminal. Child abuse is a criminal act. And while I've said before that I think all of these things should be held to a standard of the highest burden of proof, right? Guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I think that would solve a lot of these problems if you could only bring child abuse charges in criminal court, not family court, where hearsay is not allowed, where evidence is demanded, or you go free. Yet this loophole that allows these cases to be decided on the preponderance of evidence is criminal. It is unconstitutional, and it should end immediately. Now, in Georgia, we have seen them bring criminal charges. And you know what they're doing there? They're just kicking the can down the road so they don't have to try it. But they keep you in jail, or they keep you on probate. They keep you on just indefinitely. They keep you with these charges hanging over your head, but no trial. That's what's happening to the parents in Georgia. It's insane. And the prosecutors won't drop the cases, even though they know they've got nothing.
Yeah.
So it's, I guess if you have a corrupt system, you're screwed either way. But I do think that on a lot of these cases, if they were forced to abide by the standard of reasonable doubt, this would not happen the way that it does.
Absolutely.
Okay, we got past the CPI index. All right, let's see. Who's Butler Panter again? Is she she's a DCS person?
Yeah, those are the people again that were involved with the internal investigation.
And they're the ones that approved her for they found her substantiated for putting her on that list.
Mm-hmm.
Did they do that to? And they did it to you too?
They did it to me as well.
Unbelievable. And you're still on it. I can't believe that. So you're in an appeals process. How long does that take?
So we had our week in court in October of last year. So we started the appeals process in January of 2024, as soon as our girls, basically a month after they came back. So we started that, and there's the traditional process of, discovery and all that stuff. But we had our hearings in October. Then we just now filed our facts for findings, proposed orders, essentially. So the judge has 30 to 90 days, I believe, to review those and make her decision. Here's the kicker. Here in Indiana, DCS has the authority by statute to overrule the administrative judge's decision.
What?
That law just recently changed, thankfully, but it does not apply to our case because it took effect after our case was opened.
Oh, no. So if they have a bone to pick with you, for instance, if you're suing them.
Oh, they definitely have a bone to pick with us now.
Yeah, because you're suing them. So they could just say, screw you.
Publicly going after these people.
Well, they should be publicly shamed. I'm sorry, but what they've done here is absolutely outrageous. And it should not continue. If that happens, you need to let me know, and I'll go nuclear on that office. Like, we will do a calling campaign, Grant. They will not know what hit them. Yeah, go ahead.
But the judge can essentially, so if she rules in favor of us and says no, it needs to be unsubstantiated, DCS can then come in and say, no, we still think that the substantiation should be in place. And then we have to go to judicial review and in the appeals process, which there is a similar case here in Indiana to ours with the same doctors, same diagnosis, that went to judicial review and they won at that point in time. So we're hopeful.
But of course, it keeps you spending money and for months and months.
Even after you have your children home, it's like, how are you supposed to support and care for your children when you're spending thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, just to be able to take your child on a school field trip? Because that's not something that we are entitled to do since we're on this registry.
And they make it difficult for you to make money to fight them because they've put you on a list where your options for work are now limited.
Exactly.
This is horrific. This is absolutely horrific. So here are the violations that you're suing for. Count 1, violations of 42 USC 1983. They're unlawful search and seizure, basically. Defendant seized the children without probable cause, without a court order. That's a big one. You cannot seize someone's child without a court order. You cannot do it. Sean McMillan wins these cases all the time. This is a Fourth Amendment violation. All DCF agents are agents of the state, and they are required by the U.S. Constitution. I don't care what the state says. I don't care what their rules are. The U.S. Constitution says you must have a warrant before you seize anything from an American citizen, and they did not. By seizing the children, taking them from Phillips without probable cause, without a court order, and when they were in no imminent danger, defendants also violated the 14th Amendment of substantive due process right to familial relations. So these are so far we've got 4th Amendment violations and 14th Amendment violations. Also another violated 14th Amendment due process rights by seizing the children without pre-deprivation hearing or court order when there was no probable cause to believe there were exigent circumstances. My favorite part, I may send you this because you'll enjoy it. Sean McMillan puts his depositions of these people up online on his YouTube channel. And in the Rachel Bruno case, the police officer that helped seize her children, is being deposed. And he's grilling her about, did you have a warrant? And at one point she says, I seized them with no warrant. And it's like, there's your $3 million, because you can't do that. You cannot be an agent of the state. And yep, I did it. I seized them with no warrant. You just can't. And they're not even trained. When you get to the depositions part of this case, Grant, make sure you have them recorded and keep them for publication, because people need to see how these people actually, how they do this. And they're not even trained. You should have your attorney watch a bunch of Sean McMillan's depositions too, because there's some great stuff in there. They're not even trained. He needs to ask them about their training on warrants. They don't have any. Spoiler, they've never been trained to get a warrant. They have been told they have ultimate authority and ultimate power, and they abuse it constantly. Squid Raid. Hey, Squid. Hey, Squid Raiders. Thanks for being here. If you're just getting here, we are talking to Grant Phillips, and this is a new case of medical kidnapping. Again, Eller Stanlos, a baby, just like Emma Hernandez, unexplained swelling, fractures. Instead of doing any underlying testing, they just decided to seize the children. And that has led to this federal 1983 lawsuit that we are going over right now. Defendants violated due process under the 14th Amendment when they misrepresented that NP did not have genetic conditions that could lead to bone fragility. Defendants violated the plaintiff's due process rights under the 14th Amendment when they misrepresented that she suffered fractures that she did not actually suffer. All right, so more 14th Amendment, and 4th Amendment so far. By failing to follow government law regarding the classification of child abuse allegations, defendants violated the plaintiff's 14th Amendment due process rights. I will say, when I read this over the first time, Grant, I feel it's very concise, and which is a really good thing for a lawsuit to be. 14 pages is nice and tight, and I think that it seems very straightforward and like a good case. And we'll finish this up, and then I have some questions about the status of where it is now. So defendants violated plaintiff's due process rights under the 14th Amendment by not unsubstantiating the allegations of abuse and neglect against Miranda. God, I hope these people pay. Take everything, Grant. Plaintiffs have been damaged as a result of defendants' wrongful conduct. For each violation of the 1983 U.S. C-42, the Phillips individually and on behalf of their minor children seek to recover the following: compensatory damages in an amount to be determined by a jury, punitive damages in an amount to be determined by a jury. They do not want a jury to see this case, Grant. They do not. Oh, yeah. They better offer some big bucks like quickly, because if this goes before a jury, they're screwed. They should just go and watch the Maya Kowalski case to see that $260 million judgment and get some big numbers and, ready to go. Because juries don't like this. Reasonable attorney and expert fees and any further relief that may be appropriate. And this is the jury demand. Okay. Where does this was filed in 2023, I believe, correct?
This was filed in December of 24.
Oh, 24. Okay, just
Right
last
at
December.
right at our 2-year
So
statute of
where
limitations.
does it stand? Have they filed a response? Do we have a response yet?
We do not have a response yet. They have filed an extension twice.
Oh, jeez.
So we're hoping to get, I mean, my attorney has told me that we're likely to get a response with the next, and it's going to be a request for dismissal or a motion for dismissal.
Sure.
So, but he said, as you said, this is nice and tight, what we've got. And, he, and I believe as well that the allegations that we have in our complaint are enough to continue this case.
I would imagine, yes. I mean, you brought the right type of lawsuit. It needs to be federal claims.
Mhm.
And I'm very interested to see what the responses will be from them. So if you could keep me updated, I would love to go over it with the audience and keep them updated too as we go.
That's my plan.
All right, wonderful. I'm so sorry that this has happened. What a disaster! But also, thank you for doing the right thing, standing up and fighting back for you and your family. I would love to talk to your attorney someday if your attorney gets around to has time. That would be. Is it Brad? Is it Catlin?
Brad Catlin, yes.
Brad Catlin. Okay. If Brad has time sometime, I'd love to talk to him about these violations and his other cases. I would love to talk to him about the other stuff that he's been doing in other DCS cases he's had. That's one of the things I talk about here a lot that I'm very interested in. Also, you might want to let him know I'm planning on writing an article about this lawsuit for PJ Media, and I want to work on it today. Actually, I would love to get maybe just a statement from him if he would like to have a quote in there about this lawsuit and about this situation. Yeah. So I will, I'll email you a request for that and maybe you can pass that on to him.
Sounds wonderful.
All right. So you let me know if there's anything else that I can do for you in the coming days, and I will be in touch. But thank you so much. And by the way, you said you were involved in youarethepower.net now. Is that the people in the chat are asking what part of Indiana did this happen, and can they join up? If people in Indiana, can they come and help you with youarethepower.net too?
Absolutely. I just literally got started with them yesterday. So they made the official announcement yesterday. This happened in Marion County, which is the city of Indianapolis. And I'm already doing work with legislators here. I've been at the State House during the first half of our legislative session, and making these legislators aware of what's going on, these contracts. Most of them are not even aware of it. I've had a legislator sit down with the director of Family and Children's Services already and basically give them the what for about these contracts, because there should absolutely be no single contract between an entity that's providing services that, they're not verifying information. They're not seeking out any alternative defense for parents, especially in cases of medically complex children. Why are they not calling on the providers that have seen these children already? So it's you're dealing with a state agent as soon as you take your child into this hospital, and it's a complete violation of everything that's good and true to.
Oh, it's totally a violation of patients' rights, of privacy, of just the idea that you don't
this
even
country
know
stands for,
everything.
the country. I know, you cannot have this happening.
No, I totally agree with you. And I'm glad that you're talking to lawmakers, and I'm happy to hear they seem to be interested in this, because in other places where I've been, they are less so. Let's put it that way, less interested. If there are any, once you get started with You Are the Power, I'm imagining that you're going to have like an email list of people we can contact in Indiana, to help you. And we're interested in that too. My audience is really good about sending letters and to elected officials. Remember, folks, we don't contact any private individuals here, but we do contact our elected officials, and we do letter campaigns, and we use nice language, but we tell them the truth. But yeah, I always tell people, when you're writing these letters and things, we know you're very angry, but the second you start using any kind of profanity or angry language, they claim that they're victims. They claim that they are being bullied and harassed and getting threats from people. So that's one thing I love about youarethepower.net is that they write scripts for people and they help you to write in ways that they cannot use it against you. And they will, believe me, they claim all sorts of crazy stuff when the public gets involved. Yeah. So, all right. Well, this was really enlightening. And I will be following up on this case, Grant. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Megan. I really appreciate your time too.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. All right, everybody. I am, what is the plan for today? The plan for today is I am going to go to the gym. I'm going to go work out. And then I am going to get the thumbnail and everything made up for the stream tonight. So tonight at 8 p.m. on my channel, Tug and I will be going over probably the protective order in the What the Hales case that no one has seen before. We have not talked about it, and there are some bombshells in there. Let me tell you, some absolute bombshells. Those of you who don't know about youarethepower.net, make sure you go on there and you check them out. You support what they're doing. Make sure that you, if you have time to volunteer and help, you can sign up to be a chapter leader, or you can just sign up to help send letters in support of these families who are being so horribly abused by this system. The attention got brought to this situation through the Maya Kowalski case that you all were very interested in, and that we saw, and then we found out it was happening to all these parents. And you know what's really sad is that Maya Kowalski had the intention and the desire to help other families like hers with the winnings that she got. They were going to set up a legal fund with a bunch of that money that J. Hatch refuses to pay. And it hurts me every time I talk to one of these families when I think how much money they've had to spend. And here's Maya Kowalski's out there wanting to help families like this, wanting to fund these legal fights. And J. Hatch is still refusing to pay that money that a jury said pay her. And hopefully that appeal will be denied, and they will have to pay, and pay soon, because these families need help. They need help. All right, guys. I will see you tonight at 8 p.m. on my channel. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.